Okay, morning. Welcome to the All Saints Excel demo. This Excel demo is designed to help classroom teachers understand how they can use Excel to better analyze their data and understand which topics they need to cover better in future exams. So everything that we can see on the Excel right now, with the exception of the grade column, which I'll talk about later, is something that you just have to type into Excel. There's no quick way of doing it. As you can see, I've made the formatting a little bit fancier just because I like looking at it more like this. I've colored these all by hand based on how well the student's done. The student names are made up completely at random. And basically, you just have to fill this stuff out. There's no quick way of doing it. I'll talk you through it really quickly. So in the first row, we have the questions on the exam as they happen on the exam. We've got the total each student got, the percentage each student got, their grade, and then parents' phone number if we need to call home. Going down this A column here, we then have all the students. And again, I've color coded them depending on how well they've done. And we've got max marks here. And so max marks is obviously the max mark on each question. Average mark is also obviously also the average mark on each question. There's a class that we did, and then average percentage as well. It's just from the average mark. And then the topics. This row is actually very important. This is basically how you can take each. This is basically taking each question and saying, okay, which part of the syllabus does this question contain the information about, right? So you may well have to break this down differently depending on the structure of your exam and the structure of the mark scheme. So on for me, this is just a shorthand way where I can immediately know what this topic on the exam is and know therefore which ones I need to teach better. Okay, so we're going to now go over to the total column. We're going to start using some formulas to fill this out. So we're going to start with the equals, sum, and then brackets, because we need to obviously sum up the marks that the student got on each question. So we can just type in the cells, or we can click and drag and type in the cells this time. So B2, colon, and then AD2. And close the brackets, and there we go. That's our total for Paul. So Paul's not done too well, as he's going to have to call home. So we also don't need the total of the average marks. I'm going to delete that there. And here we have it. You can double click. I'll actually show that again. You can double click on this black cross to have it automatically fill down. You can also click and drag the brackets. Either way is fine. So moving on to the percentage. So in order to do the percentage, we need to basically, again, we always put that equals sign first if we're ever doing a formula or a function. And I'm going to take this cell here and I'm going to divide it by our cell down here. Now this is the max marks added up. So this is also a good thing to just check you haven't made any mistakes when you've been typing out the max marks for each question. Computing exam is out of 80, so I know I've got that right there. We also need to chuck in a $sign for the 23. That basically means when we copy the formula down, it's not going to move the row down as well because we've got that $sign for the row number. So we click enter there, and then we'll copy this down. And those are the percentages. And again, we don't need these two down here, so we'll get rid of those. Now you can see the percentages don't look very pretty, so we're going to hold that and we're going to select those, and then we're going to go to percentage here in terms of our formatting, our number formatting on the first page. So it's starting to look a little bit nicer now. Let's get the right number of decimal place we're after right now. I don't need too specific, so just a 0 decimal place is what I'm going for. And conditional formatting, now this is a really important part, I think. We need to go conditional formatting, color scales, and we can kind of pick whatever color scale we're after, if this is not being annoying. This is my favorite one to go for, that one there, which basically the lower ones will be red, the higher ones will be green. So immediately I'm getting that visual feedback, which students have done well, which have done less well, and then I use that to color the student's name here as well. So to quickly talk about the grade column, now you'll notice this formula is really grim. Okay, this is definitely possible to do with VLOOKUP, but to be honest, I have not made the time to figure out how to use VLOOKUP. The idea that I'm using here is an idea in computing called recursion, and it's a very powerful computing idea, though it looks very ugly here in Excel. Some computing languages, such as OCaml and Pascal, use it by default kind of for everything, and it can be a very efficient way of doing things. But basically, what we do is, if you want to do it like this, very brave if you do, we start with an if statement, okay, and then we're going for a logical test here. So it just needs to be any kind of logical comparison where we'll get either true or false value. So this is basically testing if this cell here is greater than 65, that's the pass mark for a 9. So if that is the case, it'll display this, a 9. As you can see, well, you can see kind of, so with 88% there, with 70, that is above 65, so it's displaying that 9 there in this cell here, right? Then if this is usually where you just put the false value, but instead of putting the false value, we just repeat that same structure with more if statements and then the lower down grade boundaries. So we then testing 58, that's the grade boundary for an 8, 54, that's a grade boundary for 7. You've got to be very careful getting all the brackets right. Again, this is quite an ugly way of doing it in Excel, but I think it is simplest for me because I haven't made the time to look at VLOOKUP. Anyway, don't worry too much about that. If you're not quite there, that's fine. It's not actually super important for this demonstration. So parents, we've got their phone numbers here, right? We can immediately see the ones who've got the lower grades. We'll just pop their phone numbers in there, and then later date we can come back and say, okay, call these parents, make sure they understand their child needs to maybe pull up their socks. So we're going to go down to the average mark here next, right? So now we're going to be using the average function to do that. Doesn't actually matter if you type it in capitals or not, but there you go. I'm going to click and drag this time. I'm going to go down this column to get that. So I'll close those brackets, click enter. And again, we're going to copy this across and click and drag this time. I think you probably have to do that. Anyway, so we can now see we've got the average that the average that the class got on each question. Again, well, it doesn't actually matter if this looks pretty or not because we're not going to be using it. We're going to be using the average percentage. So we do the average percentage by going this cell divided by this cell here, B22 in this case divided by B23. And again, that's going to be our percentage. We drag this across so we get that for all of the questions. And then we're going to make it a little bit prettier up here as well. We're going to go for percentage down here or up here on number. We're going to go for conditional formatting, color scales. Again, we're going to do it like that. And we're going to change the number of decimal points. We want fewer decimal points. We don't need all of them. So now, again, we can immediately see quite quickly which other questions that as a class we did badly on. So I can see binary shifts, I need to teach better, audio storage, network layers. I know that's going to be a topic I need to teach a bit better. And there you go. That's pretty much the Excel demonstration.